Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at how to create your own day-night cycle using only blueprints and the standard sky blueprint that comes with the Unreal Engine, which is BP Skysphere. First off, I'd just like to mention that I don't usually make videos like this. However, I still hope that this video is useful to a lot of people who are only just beginning. That being said, I'm not exactly a master of blueprints either, and most of the knowledge I've gained is from looking through the example content included with the Unreal Engine 4. Anyway, with that out of the way, I'd figured I'd show you what the finished product looks like. In my scene, I have a default blank project created in Unreal, and I've inserted a static mesh in the middle to show how the shadows work, and there's a level blueprint running in the background. So if I just enter play mode, you'll see on the left is the time in 12-hour time. You'll see it's 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, and we go through noon, and you'll see the lovely shadows on the static meshes in the middle. And then as we approach nighttime, the stars come out, we hit midnight, and we go through towards dawn. So that's what we'll be creating today. So let me just go ahead and do that, close that. We'll go on new project blank, and I'll call this day-night tutorial, and we'll create it. I usually include the starter content because it's always good to have the models and the materials and some effects that are useful to test out things. So we'll just wait for that to start on up, and we have our basic scene here. The first thing we want to do is go to our light source over here. This lights the whole scene and is used by the sun to determine where it should be in the world. And right now it's stationary, so the sun is always going to be right there because the light is always facing the same way. But we want it to be a movable object. And we also want to go down here to this arrow and disable static shadows. And after you do that, you just want to click build to rebuild the lighting and remove these static shadows that are generated by the light from the world. Because obviously those shadows aren't going to exist soon because the light will be dynamic. And after you've done that, all we have to do is go into blueprints, open our level blueprint, and the first thing you want to do is add a timeline. We'll just zoom in on that timeline, and I'll call it rotation timeline, and double click it. A timeline is basically a time mapped to float or vector values. So if I click add a float track and call it rotation, you see here this is the time, and these are the float values up and down. So if I make this 24 seconds for the 24-hour time, and you can click shift to create a new point, I'm going to say at 0, also known as midnight, the rotation is going to be -270. This is just the values that I've manually tweaked around and looked where midnight is and where noon is, etc. And that's where it is. And we're also going to shift click anywhere to make a new point. And this is going to be at noon, actually not at noon, at next midnight is 90. And we're going to zoom to fit on both axes, and we'll see that the sun is going to rotate around, and then at midnight again it's going to meet itself and it's going to loop. So make sure you click autoplay and loop so that this will always start and just keep going. And what we want to do first is we want to grab an instance of our light source from the world, and what we want to do is we want to set its rotation. So if you go in here, right click to create a new node, or drag off a point, we'll set our actor rotation to the pitch specified in this. So what we need to do is make a rot, also known as a rotator. So we'll go in there, we'll drag our rotation into the, drag our rotation into the pitch, and we'll return its value into the new rotator. Wow, I cannot click and drag this into the new rotation of the set actor rotation. Now we need to link this up so that when the timeline updates, it's going to cause that to happen, otherwise this timeline will keep setting those values and nothing will happen. And also what we need to do is we need to grab an instance of our sky sphere, which is what draws the physical sun and the stars and all that. We just drag a node off that, and we need to run its internal function, update sun direction. We're going to immediately run that straight after we change the rotation. Now this is a function in the sphere itself, the sky sphere, that will look at the rotation, do a whole bunch of functions that change its location and the lighting and everything else. And also one other thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into our timeline, and this is just an easy use thing, you don't really have to do this, but you can add another float track, and we'll call this time. And at 0, the time is going to be 0, which is midnight, but if I put 12 there, it'll make it a lot harder to understand. So we'll just put it at 0. We need to make another node, and that'll be at noon, the value will be 12. What this does is makes a mapping value that you can understand. So at 8 seconds, the time is 8. But immediately after noon, we want to have 12.01, literally a tenth of a second afterwards, or a hundredth of a second I should say. We want to set it to 0 again. And then finally, at midnight again, we want to set it back to 0. So now if I zoom to fit, I don't want to set it to 0, I want to set it to 12. So basically this will show you, it'll give you a real world representation of what the time is in the game. So if I right click and create a print string function, and we plug that in right here at the start of the update, and what we want it to print is this new time value we just made. So we'll just plug that into there. This is just a conversion node that converts the string, the float into a string. And we'll just reconnect this up here. We'll compile it, and we'll hit play. And on the left, you'll see a value that shows you what time it is. In the morning, it'll cycle through. You'll be able to see the sun there, and it's cycling through 11. And now we've gone back to 0 again because it's 12-hour time as a representation to show the user. And yeah, now you could always go back into that level blueprint and change this timeline straight from 0 to 24. So then you could hook events into this, grab this time, say if it's noon, do a function based on if it's noon. So if it's noon, ring a bell. You can do a whole bunch of things with blueprints. I'm sure there are a whole bunch of people out there who've also got other blueprint tutorials, but this is mine, my first one. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you put it to good use. Thanks.